Okay, the time is 9 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. Lori, can you please call the roll?
Mike Berlin,
Here.
Blake Ellefson,
Here.
Pat Kinney,
Here.
Laura Negro,
Here.
Ron Stendor,
Here.
Okay, thank you. Approval of the agenda.
I move, so move, Mike Berlin.
Second that, Laura Negro.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll take nominations for chair of the committee. Mr. Stenor,
I'd like to nominate Mike Berlin for president.
are there any other nominations?
I'll nominate myself, Laura Negro.
Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Okay, I will take a motion to close nominations.
I'll make a motion. We close nominations.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, now we'll take a vote for chair. This by statute, this is not a private ballot, so it'll be a public vote. So would you like to guys do roll call, raise hands? What would be easiest for you? Raise hands. Except for Blake. Well, Blake, can you just give us the hand signal for whoever you vote for?
Can you see my thumb?
There you go. That'll work. That'll work. Okay, so all those in favor of Mike Berlin? Mr. Stender, Mr. Berlin, Mr. Kinney? All in favor of Ms. Negro? Mr. Blake Ellefson and Laura Negro. Votes 3-2, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Berlin, you've been elected chairman. Meeting's yours.
Thank you. We go on to the election of vice chairman. I nominate Laura.
Second.
Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? I make a motion, we close nominations for vice chair. Being there no other individuals running for vice chair, Laura is the vice chair.
Okay, guys.
Going on to the next item of business is a 3-minute comment. Do we have any public comments on the teleprompter or on the floor?
This is Mike Stark, and I just got a comment that when you get down to item, what is it? 11 budget action or for the 2022 budget. I'd like to be able to speak or on the behalf of the town of La Pointe. We've got some issues going on there that the finance committee, I think, is aware of and want to make sure that it gets considered early on in the budget process regarding funding for law enforcement. We've had a meeting there. Dan was there and Sheriff Mike was there over on the island and we've gone through the issues that we got. And so I just want to make sure that it gets considered early on in the budget process.
This is the 23 budget, not the 22 budget, right?
Yeah, 20 for next year's budget. Yeah,
Okay.
this year's budget's already set.
Yeah.
And but it's important to get this on in the front end of the budget process rather than at the end and have a problem with it.
We can do this. Thank you. Anyone else? We got you on the. Who do you have? Anything? No?
Amber's here in place of Matt Erickson.
Okay. I see we have that on the agenda, highway equipment. Anyone online that has any comments? With that, the public comment period is closed. Let's continue on to the approval of the Finance Economic Development meeting minutes, March 8th. As indicated by Pat, there's a 2 that, do we want to even address that?
Lori, in the first paragraph of the minutes, there's a TOO.
The two should have two O's instead of one where it's used towards the last line of the first full paragraph.
So if you could just make that change when you have a chance, please.
Any other changes? I'd be looking for a vote to approve the minutes as presented or with correction.
This is Pat. I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion by Pat, second by,
Ron Stender.
no further discussion. We'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving these minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. No abstentions, motion carried. The presentation of the M3 insurance health. Do we have someone presenting this?
Good.
Yes, go ahead, Wendy.
Yep. Good morning. I'm Wendy Rosenthal from M3 Insurance, and I have John on the line. Do you mind if I share screen, please?
Hold on one second, please. I'll set you as co-host. Okay, you should be good.
Okay.
Okay, if everyone can see the screen, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right, so, this is something called a health plan performance monitor. And really what it is it's just a snapshot of how you're doing so far this year. And this first page, what you can see is in comparison to how you budgeted, you're spending about $108, or I should say $1.08 for every dollar you're setting aside. So you are slightly over budget. You're not as much over budget as you were. So you are starting to improve that way with a 108% loss ratio. We want to try and get that down under 100. But it's just, it is a little bit elevated from where we'd like to see it at. There are certain components that make up what this number is comprised of. The first is that you have total health plan costs at $1,184,000. You have net medical claims at $813,000. You have prescription drug claims at $102,000, and then you've got your fixed costs at $263,000. So that's what makes up your health plan costs. If you go to the next page, what you can see is that each month it's tracked and broken out, but it also reflects enrollment. And then if you go to the next page, this one is more reflecting enrollment, and the next one is a little bit better of a snapshot, showing sort of each column shows the breakdown of each cost. So that should help. Wendy, if you move over to the left a little bit on the screen. Thank you. A little bit more, if you don't mind. All right, that's good. That you can see, what your fixed costs were for April. The provider fees of $9, the administrative fees of $4,000,
John?
stop loss premiums of $61,000. Yes,
John, you're breaking up.
yes. Can you hear? Oh,
You're-
okay. Wendy, if you want to cover this sheet. Wendy, can
Yep,
you hear me okay?
I can do that. Yep. What we're just going to explain is your fixed costs here. Your fixed costs for the month of April, your provider network fees were $809. Your administration fees, $4,030. Your stop loss premiums, $61,373, gives you a total fixed cost of $66,212. Then we take into account your variable costs, which is your medical paid claims, prescription cost, and then the paid claims that are over your stop loss deductible. And if you can take a look up here, your specific stop loss deductible is the 65,000. So anything over the 65,000 accumulates right here in this column. So for the month of April, you had medical claims that were paid out of 273,594. Prescription drug costs were 24,741. And those paid claims that were over the stop loss deductible that you get reimbursed back for is the 35,283, which the variable cost is $263,052. So your total plan costs is $329,263. And then here we give your contract count, employee only, and then the employee plus or your family plan, which gives your total contracts. Down below here, we give that total average, or the totals, I should say. And then we go down into number 3, which gives those average single enrollment counts, average family enrollment, and then the average total enrollment. Under the total plan costs, as we saw above, was the $1,184,215. The projected plan costs are $1,094,214, which gives that plan difference of $90,001. Your funding ratio, as John said, was 108. So for every claim, or you're paying $108 out. We like to see your loss ratios, being in between like the 80-85 range. As John said, that your loss ratio is coming down from what you were before. So here's your fixed.
Just a quick interjection there. When you're self-funded, if you can be at 100%, you're fine.
Yep.
It's just on a fully insured basis. If you get to an 85 to 93% loss ratio, that's what they call a permissible loss ratio. But when you're self-funded,
like to be at that 100.
1 for 1. Yeah.
Yep. Fixed
If
costs.
you want to cover the port.
Sure. The fixed cost per employee, and then you have your variable cost per employee per year, and your total cost per employee per year. You are averaging the $26,027. So, and then I believe currently you are your dental is with another broker, and Kristen had obtained that information to show you where you're at with your funding forecast with your dental. John, I'm not sure if you want to, if you're okay now, if you want to.
Sure, if you just want to scroll down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Down to the bottom number.
There we go.
We think that
You guys
based
zoom
on,
in on that so we can see that.
Is that a little better? Or a little bit more yet?
Good.
There.
So-
How's that?
so really where you're funding at is fine. For your COBRA rates right now are with your current rates, the calculated funding rate increase is showing that your current funding rate's at $25 for single, $35 for employee plus one, and $50 for employee family. Those are admittedly low. I do have to ask though, since we're not your broker, we don't think that that's where you're really funding them. We think that that's like maybe what the employee contribution might be or some other number, because it's not realistic. So, and I don't know if by some happenstance you just have that number wrong, but we really need to be funded at is closer to $50 for single, 75 for employee plus one, and 150 for a family rate. But you wouldn't have to take that sharp of an increase. We're proposing $31.19 for single, 64.54 for employee plus one, and 111.64 for family. And we're not sure what your current broker would propose, but that's what we would propose you would use for your self-funded dental plan. So are there any questions so far?
This is Blake. I just have a couple questions more for Dan than you, but do we currently incentivize people to join spouse plan, like by paying them more?
No, we don't.
And then do we have any incentivization for people to have certain type of healthy lifestyle choices?
M3 is working on a wellness plan right now.
Okay, those are just a couple questions. That's all I had.
So I think that covers it, right, Wendy?
Yes, that's the HPPM and the dental forecast.
Yeah. Are there any other questions at all? I mean, if there isn't, it's kind of a shorter presentation, but that's the update for now.
This is Laura Negro. Data is great, especially when you have recommendations for it. So I hear we have some issues of how we're working our data at this point, that we're at 108.2 and we should be at 100. What are your recommendations for that? Have we looked at doing any kind of pharmacy carve-outs? Have we looked into negotiating with some of our biggest used vendors for medicals, say like MMC? Because I know from the data, we are not they're not exactly the friendliest with cost with us. And have we incentivized any employees to go to places that are friendly to our costs? And then the last thing, I understand we had to put in a whole bunch of stuff in place for the wellness plan, but I'm a little disappointed that here we are about a year out and it feels like we're kind of dragging on that. So anyways, there you go.
So Dan, I don't know if you wanted to comment or I should, I can let you go first. I have some thoughts.
Well, I can tell you, we've been talking about pharmacy carve-outs since this year. So that's an issue we're going to be looking at. We might be looking at issues about preferred pharmacies. So, you get a cheaper copay if you go to Walgreens, and then if you want, and pay more if you go to Walmart or anywhere else. So that way you're not telling people where to go. They're making their choice where they want to go, but one place is definitely cheaper. I think what Blake asked his first question about paying employees more if they accept their spouse's coverage is something we should consider. Because then we're taking off all that risk off of our insurance. I know other places do that, both in public and private sector. So that's what I got, John.
Yes. What I had was last year when we became your agent of record, we proposed plan design changes that were much sharper. We wanted to make a bigger shift in your plan to include changing patient liability, a consumerism component, and a prescription drug carve-out. And this is my opinion. It doesn't mean it's accurate. It's, Kristen Schmidt works with you, by the way, day in and day out. I do not. So I'm not making an excuse there. It's just a reality. And Kristen happens to be in Scotland today. I did joke with her, but that's no excuse. She would still be expected to dial in. she was not able to dial in. But I will tell you that in my conversations with her and from what I experienced when your leadership changes last year, what we wanted to do was get your funding.
John, you're breaking up again.
Higher than 126. Okay. You were running higher than a 126% loss. I don't know if I'm still breaking up.
You're a little bit better now.
Is it still breaking up? Okay. You were running higher than 126% loss ratio, and what we recommended was an improvement in your funding, and that has improved your funding, but we also recommended plan design changes and a prescription drug carve-out. But due to your shift in personnel at the county, it didn't happen. You didn't change those plans. I think you should. I definitely agree with you that I think that you should do those things. I also agree that it's time to consider a near site arrangement with the provider community. We worked with the school district in town and with CISA 12, and I think collaborating on a joint venture that would include having employees obtain healthcare at a better cost is a great idea. And I do think that that's what we should pursue. It will require employee education and new contracting efforts, but the fact that you're self-funded enables you to do it. So that's my answer.
Pat?
The changes that you referred to that didn't occur, if my recollection is correct, and I'm pretty sure it is, those changes weren't supported by the executive committee very late in the process. And once the executive committee didn't support them, then they didn't pass with the board. So it wasn't administrative staff or the administrator, it's our executive committee. So I guess to me, the lesson there is we need to have the executive committee involved in this soon enough so they understand the rationale for that, so they're more likely to support it through this budget season.
I appreciate the clarification and wasn't trying to sort of suggest one party over another. I wasn't sure why it wasn't accepted, but thank you for that clarification.
Rick? Did Rick Huber have something to say there? I see the light over there. No. Well, this is Chairman Mike here. The question I have is if we continue on the line that we're at right now, can this equalize itself here by the end of the year? The numbers that we're looking at currently is for the past 4 months. So we got 8 more months to go. And we're down to 108. So if we continue on this track, is it a probability that we can balance this thing by the end of the year without making these changes? We will be talking to the executive committee and bringing them abreast of this as well. So I guess there's a multiple questions I had. They just kind of run.
Those are great questions. Those are great questions. I have to be just 1000% candid with you that, medical claims there's an unpredictability to them. We all know that. Someone on your plan tomorrow, God forbid, could have a very serious medical condition. Five other people could be buying expensive medications like Humira costing another, 50 grand. Somebody else could need, medical treatments that cost upwards of another $500,000. It does vary month to month, and there are a lot of variables that there's a certain amount of unpredictability, and I think we all know that. And because of that, to say that you're automatically going to track towards the end of the year under 100, I'm not comfortable doing that. However, I do think it's possible that you could be, closer to a break even by the end of the year. Unfortunately, it could go the other way. So longer term, my opinion is that the changes will need to occur either way.
I have one last one. And when you guys were interviewed, as with all the other ones that were interviewed, you were also asked about medical tourism. I know it's sometimes just going to Duluth and sometimes it's going down to the cities, incentivizing people if they can pre-plan different surgeries and give them a little boost to go to the place that cost us sometimes anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000 less. Has that been discussed?
It has been discussed, like the other things, it would require education and something that we'd have to work more closely with your group on to implement. I think it makes sense to do that in stages. It sounds to me like you are ready for that, which is great. I think that what we should do is try to implement for January.
Any other questions for John? Well, thank you, John. Have a good day. And Wendy?
Thank you. You guys have a good day as well.
Thank you. Thank
Chair? It would
Thanks
be
a lot.
nice if we could have reports on this more often than what we have been. At least quarterly and possibly a little more. So that way we can, and I think we need to have a plan with this. We do pay them to handle our healthcare, and I'd like to see what the timelines on these things are, because here we are a year out and we just got told we should shoot for January. So
Yeah, you
I
not,
think we could have a little
I
tighter
don't
line
disagree
on
with you.
that.
I don't disagree.
Excuse me. I think we could have a little tighter line on that.
I agree. John, do you respond?
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I don't disagree. I think we should lay out the timeline for you, but I will also be candid that these kinds of changes are significant. And even if we implemented them tomorrow, like it's not something that your population can utilize without education. So I think it is important to get it on paper and meet more frequently. Thank you.
So on this performance monitor, you will be sharing this with us on a quarterly basis? That's doable?
It's a monthly
Yes,
basis.
you get it monthly right now.
Oh,
Yeah.
month? Okay.
Yeah, so you'll be getting these every meeting.
Oh. Thank you.
I also want to say that, I'm sorry, Larry, that as of today, the health insurance fund is in the hole $175,000. So we did have to borrow money from the general fund to cover those expenses. So that's the unpredictable healthcare that he was talking about.
And is that been pretty much every year, or is that just a one-time event?
No, it's the health insurance fund has been losing money every year for several years. How much money is in the fund goes up and down during different parts of the year. But I have no doubt that we're going to end the year somewhere around there.
Or Laura?
If we could get a copy of that dental plan that the report from the dental too, and have that put into the packet, please.
Pat, did you have something?
This is more of a comment for Mike and Steve, actually. We increased the level of funding for healthcare this year, hoping that, we would stay under that 100, which we may well not, especially since once people meet their deductibles, they tend to use more healthcare late in the year. If there had been money left over from the employee portion, we were going to set that aside in a separate account and use that towards their costs going forward. But if we end the year short, two questions: how are we going to handle that in regards to the employee portion? And then also from a budget perspective, if we need to fill a gap, do we have a plan of filling that gap at the end using funds by the end of the year, or are we going to put that in the next budget? And those questions really could wait till later, but I'd want to know the answers as we get further in budget season.
Thank you. John is still on. Is he dismissed now? Okay. Thank you, John. Have a good day.
You too. Thank you.
Moving on, we have Steve and Mike to discuss with us some issues.
Okay, thank you. I'm Mike Konechny, this is Steve. I think most of you we've met, and Laura, you were usually on screen, now you're here, so it's nice to see you. Anyway, we're, just for, I think there's one new member on the committee. We're continuing our work on our, we call it our action plan, implementing, we had approximately 20 some recommendations that we're assisting the county with implementing. And they kind of fall into two different areas. We're working with your financial systems in the general county office, the county clerk's office, and many of the departments, for various reasons. We're adding more different softwares and changing procedures on for various reasons. And then we're also, we've extended that into going into departments and looking at the way things are handled sort of deeper on down in the departments for internal control purposes and various things. And just a high level summary, we've made progress on, I would say, all of the recommendations. And we've started all of the software initiations that we feel that would be beneficial for the county to have. So have we completed any of them? Not yet, but we made progress on all of them. And I'm going to turn it over to Steve here, and he can kind of go over the kind of 4 different areas of software that we're looking at. So
Everybody hear me? So the areas that we're talking about, the one of the first recommendations we had was to increase the access to Springbrook, your financial package that you use. And just to kind of, not to go through that list in detail, but to give you a little bit more of a flavor for the benefits and kind of why that's important. So as we add users and they have access to that data, that's going to make management of your budgets by department heads and by staff that monitor budgets. They're going to become more aware of costs. They're going to have a better tool because this data will be accumulating in your ERP system, your Springbrook system, and which will increase their awareness of costs and revenues and just become better at developing budgets for you. In addition, reporting out of that system will become something that will become more useful. We did run into a little glitch. We had hoped by now to have a report for you as board members of, like a monthly type report of budget kind of activity. There is an issue with the way the chart of accounts was designed originally back, 20 some years ago when you first went on Springbrook. There isn't a department code so that we can segregate costs by department. We did work with Springbrook. They did give a quote, which I think is very reasonable. I think it was roughly $3,700. Dan approved it. But we're at the mercy of them too to schedule this. And of course, with everything nowadays, labor's tough. So I think we're at about 6 weeks out before they can get to that. So just to give you a flavor for when that report would be coming. I know it's been anticipated and we had hoped to have it by now, but we're at the mercy of some things too that are beyond our control. But what we're going to do is we met with Pete over at Human Services yesterday to make sure that whatever change we recommend and implement is going to set you up well for the future. And by that, I mean specifically, currently Human Services has a subsystem that they track all their expenses and report to the state off of. So they have a lot of detail in that system. And you have a little detail in your Springbrook system. And I think the plan is we're going to flop that. So you're going to have more detail in your Springbrook system. But in order to do that, we have to provide the coding ability so that Pete can get the isolate costs so you can report it and track it. So that's another benefit of changing your account number string. Some of which will probably only be used by Human Services. So it won't be something that, well, Sue and the people in the courthouse probably would use, but it'd be available if they wanted to. Okay. Then another area that we dove into was pushing accounts payable processing out to departments. And while it's not completely done, I can tell you that Sheriff's Department, Highway, Clerk of Court, Administration, DA, Treasury, Forestry are all completed, that they're doing it. Veterans, Register and Probate, and Land Description will be before the end of this month. And then before the middle of next month, Land Description, Zoning, Ag and Extension Corner, and Land Conservation should be on board too. And what that means is staff and departments will be keying in their own requests for payments. They'll attach the invoice, so there's an image of it. So the benefit of that is down the road, they can go back into the system and they can drill right back down and see what they paid for with, within their budget. That'll help them in developing budgets and monitoring and all that kind of stuff. It becomes a very useful tool. So just a little flavor on that. It also changes the role of the clerk's office in the AP process, accounts payable processing, to be more of a secondary review and adherence to policies, so that can be something that they focus on, so that you have an actual invoice and you're not paying from a statement, somebody signed off on it saying they received the goods. All of those types of things can be now monitored by them when they get the information from departments. So it kind of changes their role a little bit. Cash receipts. Currently, of course, the first was Treasury. We started February with them. Sheriff came on, I think, in April.
Weeks ago,
Yeah,
2 weeks ago.
April-ish, and County Clerk is up and running too. We predict the next thing will be Forestry, so the office in Butternut would be using receipting. Human Services will be doing that, and I believe that will be probably July-ish. And then we also believe zoning could benefit from it. And just to let you know, we don't believe every department would become our cash receipting station. Just because of volumes and their proximity to the treasurer's office, they could go there and make payments there. And by doing this, it strengthens internal control by issuing a formal receipt that's recorded directly to the general ledger at the time it's given to the person, as opposed to writing in a receipt book. Of course, there are many opportunities if it's not something that's centrally tracked and located for people to do things that you don't want them to do. So that's what we mean by internal control and strengthening that. The system is set up so that if there's 4 receipting stations, there's one series of numbers for receipts. So if somebody grabs a receipt here, it's 1. If it's over here, it's 2, 3 here, 4 there. It goes by how you grab the receipt. It's tracked that way so that all receipts are tracked and you can run reports and know that they're all accounted for, but they may be in different batches throughout your system. So there are controls on that. Then that will also increase the amount of information in your general ledger, because prior to that, you were recording receipts by journal entry. So it was like one number just plugged in. So you'll have much more detail to, again, be useful to people that now have access to your system. Another module that you're beginning to use is the accounts receivable module. When we went around and interviewed departments, people did what they had to do to get an invoice out. They issued it in Word, QuickBooks, what have you. I mean, they did what they had to do to survive. But then there was no centralized tracking of that or monitoring. So, not that we noticed anything wrong, but it's better to have it uniform and monitored by a central system. So Highway is going first on that. Amber's our guinea pig there, and she's getting that set up. We recommend that even if a department issues invoices like once a year, you still use it. I mean, it's still a good thing to have it run through there and be accounted for in there. So, and then the other thing it does is it separates, for internal control purposes, the person issuing the bill with the person collecting it, because payments would be sent to the treasurer's office. So it just, again, it's an internal control thing to strengthen that something can't go wrong with the cash thing at a department. The other thing that is just starting here is what's called employee self-service. It's a separate website from Springbrook, but it attaches to Springbrook so that employees will be able to key in their time through there, do leave requests for like vacation, sick, personal time, any of those type of leave benefits. So once it's up and running, if I'm an employee, I'll have a login. I can go in, I can see my check stubs, I can see my W-2. It'll be electronic copy. I'll still get a paper copy, but it'll be there in case I need it. I can also ask my supervisor by clicking a button and saying, hey, I want to take Friday off. The supervisor gets an email saying, hey, Steve wants to take Friday off. They go in and they can approve it or disapprove it, whatever. It creates my timesheet when it does that. So it tracks that. Employees will have their leave balances showing up on their check stubs, as opposed to right now, it doesn't show up on their check stub and it's tracked in a department somewhere. So it's not centrally administered either. By having it run through this piece of software, there will be logic set up and tracking so that everybody's treated the same. Okay, so that, not to say that's going on, but I couldn't go to my boss in one department and get a little bit of an advance or something on my vacation. If that was the county policy, well, you could do it, but if it wasn't the policy, it's going to be uniform throughout. Okay. So let's see. Employees can also do other things in there, and like you can forecast and predict your for your W-2, your withholding, things like that. So you can change your direct deposit. We do recommend that you get a paper copy to the office because we have seen fraud with that, where somebody steals your password and then changes it, and now it goes to my account instead of yours. So there, and the plan is to do it that way. And then as Mike, I believe, alluded to, when we're out working in departments, because of our experience, we can't just look the other way when we see something. So that leads us into the internal auditing part of this. So when we see something, we are obligated to mention it and bring it up. And so, different departments, we feel like we've added value there. So for instance, in the sheriff's department, assisting with development of cash handling procedures and getting things recorded that weren't being recorded on the books. Because of Mike's experience with understanding how your state financial report form A works, we noticed that, or Mike noticed that, when it was being prepared by your former audit firm, they weren't reporting your highway revenues correctly, which ended up understating your highway costs, which go into a formula that calculate your transportation aids. So by making changes, and because Mike's a CPA, he's going to be able to attest to, we're going to amend your past reports. Last year was a bigger year because you had the CDBG closeout and things like that. But we think that your revenue, if it would be the same for all the 6 years in the calculation, could be about 50,000 more per year that you're going to get. And that will go on to, unless your costs change, it should stay. So that's why we want to go back and amend those forms, is to hopefully get the biggest impact next year right away. Then, like when we were in forestry, obviously we saw they had a separate bank account that's been closed out. Now they deposit directly to the treasurer's bank account. I mean, you guys were in a poor cash position, so to have that other account when it could be benefiting the county wasn't the best thing. And the staff have been good. Like when we were there in April, I think it was, Sarah, who is your former office employee, was training Shayna, who's your new one. We noticed on the invoices, it said remit to in the butternut address. And we said, well, could you change that to just send it to the treasurer? And she said, oh yeah. So they changed that. So invoices now are sent out. Now, whether the logger is actually sending it to the other address, we have to see, but we'll get it to go that way so that they'll come right there. So, and then human services, assisting, like we're working with Pete to try to change so that they spend a lot of time reconciling between their system and your system. And for payroll too, like with the ESS, I can't promise this, but the one thing I want is, as my goal, is to work with Springbrook to have a import so that when they do their time reporting in their system, we can pull that file in, similar with Amber with the chem system for highway. If we can pull that data in, It just eliminates anybody else having to key it. It's done. So I'm hopeful that they'll be able to do that, but I'm not going to promise they'll do it because I don't control it. But I think those things are, obvious big time things that I think are, we've made a large progress on. And then, the development of your 5-year capital plan too is something that I think is going to be a benefit for you going forward too. I don't know. Do you want to add anything, Mike?
Yeah, no, you summarized those departments, and I'm the one that kind of spent a lot of time in the sheriff's department. And I know, just to give you a little more information on that, they changed their software to provide better internal control over collecting money. But I worked with them on how they use that software and how they balance it and how often they look at it and how frequently they make deposits. And I've been, every time we come here, I go over there and they're making a lot of progress with that. So that's going well. And then maybe just to talk a little bit more about forestry, they have a separate software system there too. And again, I've been auditing counties for 40 years and, they weren't using it the best way. And again, they're not trained financial people. So with just a few different changes in that, there will be much better controls over using that software too. So it took a little while. And, but anyway, as I say, like Steve said, we're making progress in all places here. Are we at the end yet? No, we feel we got everything's on the table out there. And we're going to propose we get a more definite schedule on how these things happen the next few months, so we can see how these things close up. So, yeah. So we'll take any questions. I know it's a lot of information, a lot of different topics. But if anybody has any questions or comments, we'd like to hear them.
Go ahead, Pat.
From a grant administration standpoint, I would assume that these changes that you're making makes it easier for people to administer grants and oversight on that. Is there anything, if we did have a part or full-time person that was a grant administrator, that you would add or suggest to make that position work more smoothly?
I would say, first of all, on what we're doing will make grant administration a lot easier, because they'll have access to the accounting detail. They can set up accounts to track grants in a certain activity and see revenues, and can easily see the cost to prepare claims. But as far as having a centralized grant person, and I know some of the larger counties have positions like that. Not very many, but there are some. See, probably, I don't know what percent, but a large percent of your grants are human services. That's where the big state money goes. And they have a system and they have people in place, and to understand all that, it's somewhat technical, because client needs and different age range, different things come in. I don't believe it would be beneficial to have that position, or necessary, because you got human service with a number of different people in different areas doing those grants, supervised by Pete, really. And the other grants, your other main place for grants is conservation and land, land and water. And that's, a relatively small department managed by a person that understands that and knows that. So yeah, I don't believe a kind of an grant administrator position would be worthwhile.
But within each department, this will make their jobs less time consuming and
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And actually it was brought up yesterday about potentially adding indirect costs on these grants. And that's another way to recover some of your overhead and some of your, every department shares in the county clerk's costs, the county treasurer costs, the administrator, and, maintenance and everything else. And that's what indirect costs can capture. So that was brought up yesterday and discussed a bit. So.
And then, because you just talked about that, another thing came up that I forgot to mention as an internal auditing thing. In some cases, when you're billing other third parties for services the county provides, all of the costs weren't being added on for the position, let's say. Because like workers' comp insurance is specific to a payroll rate for the person, and that wasn't being allocated out to bill the third party, okay? It's a cost of providing the service. It should be included in that. So I mean, we're working to change that. But that was one thing when you're talking about that, I just thought of, so.
It occurs to me that we're monitoring the budgets by departments, as you indicated, right? And obviously, if we're monitoring these budgets, everything has a place to go. And all the money coming in has a place to be. And after everything's all said and done, are you going to be making a recommendation to the finance committee with regards to, say, a performance report for each and every department? Say, if the department heads, let's call them department heads at this point in time, whether they be directors or whatever their titles are, if they do a quarterly report for themselves, for their programs, it would be easy for them to do an annual performance budget report. And of course, as you discussed, indirect costs, that's currently not even being addressed. But it's something that could generate funds for the county.
Yeah, you have make a lot of good suggestions there. Well, see, where you are now is your revenues of a department don't easily track to the expenditures of the department. And that's what Steve mentioned about creating a department number. So like, clerk of courts can be Department 34 and Highway 22 and whatever numbers you want to use. And the report will pull the revenues for that department and match them up with the expenditures in one relatively concise report. So we need that to happen. Your part about performance measures, I think you were getting at, and that is a very popular and rather recent thing that government budgets have added. And I have worked with counties and cities on doing that. You're not there yet. I mean, that's something that can be.
Whoever is on the phone is making that noise. Can you please mute?
Yeah.
Ronald's iPhone.
Okay, that is something that can be looked at, but we got to get to a certain level first. And I know for one county, I developed some performance measures like highway maintenance cost per mile, winter maintenance per mile, construction repaving cost per mile, and number of miles done per year compared to your total machinery revenues per employee. Those are all kinds of human services is a little harder to develop performance measures, but it's possible. So, anyway, it's trying to track the cost with a statistical data. And it's easier in a private corporation, obviously, but it can be done in governments, and you see a lot of budgets, but we're not there yet. That would be probably something.
As you mentioned in this review here, that these departments all have different softwares. As you work with these different departments, are we working with these departments to the point where these softwares are going to be compatible with the Springbrook? So at one point you had indicated that we have money over here and we have a little bit over here. Now you're going to switch it over to where it's more Springbrook and it's more, what do you call it, defined per se.
Yeah,
compatibility is a big, I think that's key right now.
Yeah, yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and like I had said, we're looking to integrate the payroll kind of hours from CHEMS, which is a state system, and I think it's Time Cards Plus or something like that HSD uses. Springbrook is open architecture, so it can accept stuff. The one spot where it's not as open and I'm not as 100% sure of is in the payroll end of it. So that's why I'm not going to commit to saying timesheets will pull in. but we're gonna do our best to make it happen. When I look in the software, it has a standard format with a drop down, which leads me to believe I could have a non-standard format and a, a different format. So we may have to have those developed and you may have to pay for them, but in the end, if that's the case, the cost is well going to be worth the benefit that you're going to get from it.
Yeah, I mean, just to answer overall your question, and you're not unique in having departments with separate softwares. Some of them are mandated or strongly recommended by the state, which is the CHEMS highway system. You wouldn't want to do that from scratch in the Springbrook. They're using the CHEMS supported by the DOT. They spend a lot of money on it, and it works very well. It's been used for 30 years, probably, something like that. And the timber software that's used by forestry, very unique. You can't really use Springbrook for that because it tracks cords of wood and type of wood and all kinds of different information like that. So you aren't going to do that. So I mean, what we're doing with the departments is having them integrate the information in a better way and more of easier for people. And that's pretty typical with counties. Like Clerk of Courts has CCAB software mandated by the state of Wisconsin. So that, it's not, there's not like separate money everywhere. It's a system for accumulating cost and tracking expenses, really. Yeah. Human service has to do a lot of things by client. Well, you can't build that in a general ledger software system. You got to have something else that does that. So again, that's pretty standard. So
Thank you. Any other questions of Steve or Mike?
This is Blake. I have a question. So we've talked a lot about the ERP system, and when you're talking revenues and expenses, it's back to accounts payable, accounts receivable. So today, every different group in the county has their own accounts receivable and accounts payable, and the people within that division manage that. Is that correct?
for accounts receivable, that's basically correct, that every county department that has to invoice outside parties has developed their own system for accounts receivable. That is true. Accounts payable is all on one system.
Okay.
It's all on one system.
Yeah, the only other thing I'd add to the accounts receivable aspect is departments are invoicing currently, using Word or QuickBooks or whatever. That's not necessarily recorded as a receivable on the county's general ledger until it becomes cash and comes in. The new system would record it as a receivable and track it at the time it was billed.
And would this consolidate the accounts? So all of the different groups would be doing it this one way now?
Correct. Yeah. And that is a huge benefit is when forestry doesn't, if they do an invoice or land and water or highway or whomever, it's all in a central system then, so that could be administered. So for instance, if you're going to send people to collection because they haven't paid, you can send your dunning letters and track it and make sure it's administered correctly, and then eventually send it off for collection. As opposed to having each department be responsible for that, it's centralized that, then it's uniform too. I'm not cutting a deal to somebody that I know that isn't paying their bill, if I'm in a department. Not saying that's happening, but it centralizes it.
And what is the time frame that we're trying to get to that? Is that in place yet?
It's in the process of being rolled out right now. Department staff have been trained. It's in the beginning stages of implementing. Amber's setting up her customers and her codes, and I think, don't put you on the spot, but you're planning to start doing invoicing soon, right? Yeah. Okay. So you probably couldn't hear that. She wasn't on the mic, but she's planning to probably put April invoices that the highway department would have sent out to track them. And then May, we just start going from there and going. And then, the next department will come on and, eventually all departments will be invoicing through that. So.
Yeah, and just to add to that a little bit, one exception was highway invoices were recorded and receivable and were always tracked.
Yeah.
And that was, because that's your biggest billing system in in the county is highway. But anyway, so a lot of departments do not issue invoices like routinely, like every month. It's different times a year for different purposes. So most departments, this is not a big deal. So, but they might issue 10 invoices a year. Some might issue 3 or 4, but they should still use the software and everything will be tracked centrally.
You okay, Blake? Good deal. Any other questions, Laura?
Less of a question, but much appreciation. You guys have had the job of, and it's just the nature of the government game to have all of these different pieces rolling out there, but you've been really great at herding the cats and getting them closer to where they need to be. Because I can almost feel a report for a committee that I can track budgeted versus actual, and I am so excited. But and I believe we should be doing that, and it makes all of our lives as supervisors that much easier. So thank you.
Yeah, I know that you were looking forward to that and I had hoped to give it to you today. We'll get it.
Thank you, Mike and Steve.
Okay, you're welcome.
Continuing on, we have an action item here, establish a home alarm fee.
Yeah, this is something that actually Mike and Steve came up with. Currently, we don't charge individuals who have home alarms any sort of fee for using the 911 service. It's typical counties charge what, $25 or something a year for that. And
Yeah, just, this is a fee that 2 counties I worked with a lot, Washera County in the middle of the state and Door County over in the eastern part have that because they have a lot of part-time, vacation property kind of thing. And a lot of those people have alarms or whatever, systems to safeguard their homes and whatever. And I think Washera was started in 35 now, but might have started at 25. So, and I don't know if you want to go ahead.
Well, it helps offset our law enforcement costs, but it also brings in a new revenue source. And there's a lot of people who have homes that they're only here for a couple months out of the year. It does cost us money to maintain emergency services for them. So we're proposing adding this fee to all alarm systems. And if you approve it, then we'll create a resolution and bring it to the county board.
I was kind of waiting for Laura to chime in here, but I believe that she had asked, do we have numbers on these vacation homes or?
Sorry, no, we don't have numbers on actual how many vacation homes there are. So this would affect everybody who has an alarm system,
Okay,
whether or not they're local or not, or vacation.
so Ashland County is pretty big, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and there's tourist areas in both the north and the south of the county. So
Let me ask, rephrase the question. Is it possible for us to track how many those homes are out there?
how many vacation homes there are?
Yes.
I'm going to say that's relatively not possible. Because
You're not going to want to do it for just vacation homes either.
No,
No.
no. And I don't think you can. I mean, when you don't know what, an individual is using their property for, somebody could have a home in Clam Lake and the tax address is in Milwaukee. But that doesn't mean they don't spend 9 months of the year up in Clam Lake. And that's really their residence. By the same token, they can only spend 2 weeks up there too. There's no way for anybody to know that.
So this would be a fee for all Ashland County
Fire, yes.
residents.
No, it's not all residents, all residents that have alarm systems. So if you don't have an alarm system at your home, which I don't have one, then I wouldn't pay for that. It wouldn't apply to somebody who has like a Ring system. Like the Ring doorbell, which has cameras and stuff. That's all just attached to your Wi-Fi at home. That doesn't actually go to
Yeah, I think you'd be charging a fee for the monitoring. So if it's alarm system connected to the sheriff's department, so if it goes off, they're notified. Those are the systems you'd be charging the fee for.
I have a question. What if I'm going through ADT and I'm paying them? Are you going to charge me for having an alarm?
I think only if it's monitored by the sheriff's department is what I've seen. So no,
Okay.
if ADT, if your alarm goes off and ADT calls you, or they call the sheriff's department, then when you said, no, it's not me, I'm not here. Then there would be no monitoring fee for that alarm because the sheriff's department's not monitoring.
One of the biggest problems with alarm systems is that they malfunction. Sometimes you get a lot of malfunctions and you have police officers running to the same house day after day. Are there going to be any fines for that? And does that go to the monitoring company or to the homeowner?
Yeah, I know at least in Washera County's case, that was part of the resolution, a fine system. First time, that's fine.
Things happen.
Second time, charge. Third time, higher charge, if they're not properly maintaining their system or something. That shouldn't be the sheriff running, in your county, 40, 50 miles maybe sometimes.
Yeah.
To go check something. So, yeah, that's.
So this would be going to homeowners that have an alarm system that would call into the sheriff's department. Those are the people that would have to pay.
Yeah.
But if it went into a different monitoring system,
Who would ever know,
Yeah, okay.
Right, that's generally the way that works.
Okay, so are these systems just registered with the sheriff's department then? Because I don't see everybody running up and going, oh, me, sign me up for that fee. I mean,
Yeah.
are we just finding out through use if they have these systems and they're starting to ding us, or?
Yeah, and I don't have all the details. I'm not, I just know they do these things, and I believe there's a form that requires them to register with the sheriff's department. They fill it out. They have on there like, where's the hidden key, so we don't have to break your door down, and stuff like that is all tracked in this system. So I would suggest you possibly contact one of these counties that's doing it. And maybe our sheriff's department people contact them, so you can get on the same details that they have.
I think this is kind of where we had landed before with needing the research. So I'd really love to see Washera's or maybe both
Yeah,
of
we're gonna
the
need
other
a pro-
policies.
kind of a proposal in front of us
Yeah.
to pick through and,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of ways things, I've been involved with this, so I know it can go sideways a little.
So the action to this item is going to need more information. table it.
Research.
table for now, yeah.
Yeah.
Do we have a motion on the floor to table this issue for more information?
Mike, Chair? I
Yes.
just want to ask add one thing to the list. What about on Madeline Island? Who's responding to these calls right now? Is it the sheriff's department or is it law enforcement on Madeline Island?
It's a good thing we have Mr. Stark here. He can answer that question.
I honestly do not know who's probably, I'm sure it's the police officers on the island. I mean, I know it's the police officers on the island.
So if it is staff on the island, could the island consider doing this, just for the island and the county, the rest? Otherwise, if the county does the whole thing, and maybe we'd have to because of the 911 system, but that would help to fund the county making a contribution to the island.
Yeah, and this is help to offset the cost of dispatch. So
Next item is discussion action item.
Um,
jail
e-
administration.
Excuse me, please. If there was a
Sure.
motion made to table that, we were unable to hear it. It's like you guys all went blank.
Yeah, this is Pat. I'll make the motion to table. We didn't do that yet.
Okay, thank you.
Ron Stender will second.
We have a motion by Pat, second by Ron to table this item issue, home alarm system. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Any abstentions? Motion carried. Thank you. Going on to item number 10, jail administration. Who's
So, Kim, are you online?
Yes, I am.
Okay. You should have in your packet a letter from Community Superior Choice Credit Union. And Kim just wanted to make an explanation about this.
Yes, I just wanted to let everyone know that I did have the Superior Community Credit Union do a research on the missing accounts that was in the newspaper, and it had been bank teller's mistake. And granted, the jail staff, Lieutenant Tony Jones, did not find that error in the 11 years because it was done in 2011. But also every year, the Lieutenant Jones sent over bank statements to the courthouse, and it was not caught by the courthouse, nor was it caught by the county auditors for 11 years also. So I just wanted that known by everyone that that was a mistake that was made by the bank, not by the jail. And if anyone had any more questions about the bank accounts, that they could come to me and ask. I want to be as transparent as possible.
Can't forget Blake. Are we good? No action needed?
I-
Thank you for your input. Moving on for the
Thank you.
2023 budget. Mike had to leave here, but would be one item that we, I'm sure the budget committee is going to be looking at for 2023 is the budget that we have set aside for the Madeline Ion. But other than that, what do you got, Dan?
Well, I guess we're looking as a staff, and we're all looking for some sort of guidance of where you want spending to go. For now, I've told everybody that there'll be no spending increases. We're also looking for a targeted wage increase range. We don't need a specific number, but say, more than 3, but less than whatever. We feel that, speaking for the entire staff, I can tell you that wages are not keeping up anywhere near with inflation. So I'm going to ask this committee to consider a wage increase on that's closer to the inflation rate. I will note that Price County did a 2% increase at the beginning of the year, and then in April did a 9% increase. Now, I know we can't do that, but I can tell you every employee knows that. At Bayfield County is looking at a 7 or 8% for next year. So I guess if we could get a feeling on what kind of range you guys are looking at, and I don't know if we can make it fit, but where do you see us going?
This is Pat. My thoughts on this is, yes, it'd be hard to fit, those bigger numbers, but, on the other hand, it's not a long-term plan to balance budgets in the back of employees. It just doesn't work. So if we look at the Social Security increases, those are indexed from the end of October. It's inflation through the end of October of each year. So starting with, I'm sorry, September. And so if you take the last 3 months of last year where inflation really started to go up, it would run through the inflation rate through the end of September. And right now, an estimate on that is it would be 8.6%. And those numbers are available in early October, which fits with our budget season. And that's tied to the CPI for Consumer Price Index for urban wages and clerical workers. And we could investigate whether that's a good measure of inflation, in our neck of the woods, what it takes into account, housing, cars, et cetera. But that would give us a target number that Social Security recipients would receive. And so we have an older population here, a significant number on Social Security. They're going to see that number in their checks. And they're going to say, yep, that's inflation and costs have gone up. So I think, as taxpayers, they're going to understand that if they're getting what's now estimated to be 8.6%, that would seem reasonable for employees. So it would be hard to fit that into the budget, but I'd like to propose that as a starting point to work from. It seems fair and reasonable to me.
There's a couple different inflation rates. There's also annual core inflation rate, and at the end of April 2022, it's 6.2%. I'd like to see a few different scenarios. 4 is going to be low, 8 I feel is going to be high, 6 might be in the middle. If we hit a 4, 6, and 8 for budgeting reasons, I think that should give us a good grip on where we want to land, what we can afford, and gives us time to plan how we can work it all in.
Are there any other priorities in the budget you want us to look at? The goal of this item is to bring the finance committee in right away into the process and try to find out, make the process easier down the road.
I think we need to do some kind of hearings, listening sessions, online surveys. We tried this previously because, as great as it is us jumping in and saying priorities, we're here to represent the people we got elected by, and knowing what they would like to see and then going from there. Because I know a lot of that is going to fall into the big 3, HHS, the Sheriff's Department, and Highway. But depending on which programs those are and direction that we can get from people, it would be great. Bayfield County does it every year and they get at least some input. So
Just last week, I was talking to Brian Mayotte over here at the Bed River Tribe, and he showed me like 1.5 page of ARPA funds out there that's currently available until it's spent. And we shared some of this with Dan previously, and the ones that we had looked at, the county is not eligible for. But it appears that some of the grants that's out there at the present time in the $3.5 billion and so on, what have you, those are pretty big amounts. Those funds are available until they're obligated. I would like to take and throw that on the table, get that list from Brian and see if we can capture some, if not any of those funds. Maybe I can throw a hook out here toward Blake and bring him in on the conversation. What is your thought on this, Blake?
Well, I had a question. We want to prioritize, but when I got a huge packet on the forestry stuff, but it didn't give me the financial picture. And so I need to have, as a finance committee person on the board, I need to see where these, different groups are at within this county so that we can prioritize. That's my feeling is, some of them may be doing really well, but I haven't been able to and I know I'm new, so I'm asking for a lot, but it sounds like this reporting that we're working on is going to make our lives much better, because then I can get a better picture of, okay, where should we be focused on from a financial standpoint? And so, until I can see where the highway group is, where the I need to kind of get a better picture to be able to set my priorities on, where we can focus. That's my sense.
Well, this is Mike again here, and this is why I had asked the Mike and Steve here the questions that I did with regards to the monitoring the budgets and a performance monitor of a recommendation that they may provide to us when they complete or near completion of your review of all of our program departments. Because it's important for us to know, the budgets, and because when we're moving money around, much like Blake had indicated, we need to know. And my last term here as chairman of the finance committee, that was a learning experience. And we're only going to go from there. And we're going to be looking for more information that you can supply to us. And of course, this is why you're on board, to help us with this task. And with that being said, we just need to know to help our constituents and our departments. Laura's got a question.
No, more of a comment. Now, as great and as lofty as some of the goals that we have are, even with the help of our financial consultants, we're not going to get all of that information as soon as we need it. Sometimes it's the good old, you have to attend the other committees. We can do that by Zoom. That's how I've figured out a lot of the stuff I've dealt with, is attending some of the other committees and looking, because there is different financial things that come through. And I feel as a participant on this committee, it's kind of my duty to go and find that information if we don't have it readily available. So there is that. Also, I know as we're talking about this, there's also a letter in here, the budget letter. Under your narratives piece on that, I would really like to see from the departments what their year goals are and what kinds of changes, innovations, whatever that they've done. So we know who is being the most progressive with the money they can. And I know there's some departments that don't have much flexibility in that. But when it comes to talking with the citizens about this, sometimes, Health and Human Services can be awfully darn creative with how they've either structured a position or new groups that they've brought in to be able to give services to and have stretched extra dollars. Letting our citizens know what kind of great innovators we have inside our departments is also good too.
I guess one of the things also I'd like to do is towards the end of the summer, beginning of fall, somewhere on that time period, is have the department heads come in and talk about their budgets directly and let you ask the specific questions about the budgets. So like, I don't know, for better lack of better term, defend the budget.
Go ahead. Whoever.
A few more questions, maybe not for today, but as we go through this process, if we're going to make changes to the healthcare plan, which translate into higher costs for the employees, how are we going to balance that with the not just property tax increases, but also the wage increases? So fitting that into the piece of the puzzle. And then assuming inflation, starts to come down, the property tax increase this year, how will that compare to going forward? Could we smooth that off a bit with debt service so that that property tax increase may be something lower than what the wage increase may be, but then we make up for that, in a year or two out, with the tax increases more smoothly. And then the highway department, you've got some projects that you've applied for money for, and do we have matches there? So in terms of priorities, if we have highway projects that we can get funding for, do we have matches for that we need to put into the budget, including, I don't know, on the Madeline Island grant application, we increased the amount that was proposed and what we applied for. I don't know if we got that, but there's a match there too. So we may have, a larger amount to highway just because there's an opportunity there.
Yeah, and for those highway projects, where the federal government is giving you 80% of the money, and if these things come up and we don't have the money budgeted already, I would be a proponent of doing long-term bonding to cover our portion. You know, even if interest rates are 5 and 6%, I mean, feds are still paying 80% of roads that we're gonna have to fix sooner or later. So long-term bonding is a way you could smooth out the tax levy. It becomes more static every year. So I think we'd have to look at that with highway projects for sure.
Do you have something, Laura?
Yeah, as you talked about having the departments come in, if we can do that in smaller bites with a few of them instead of all of them all at the same time, that would be great. And as we look at bonding and mortgage the future of our kids and such, just making sure we keep that in mind. With the priorities of the projects and, possibly going through and ranking some of these projects in the hierarchy of needs, just to, and I think Pat has brought it up before, that sometimes you have to look at those bigger ones and some of the smaller ones fall, but we don't have the king's purse. We have just, our citizens.
Well, we in the finance committee have discussed this on the 22 budget, on having the department heads come to us and explain, show and tell. We need to know, because we had a couple of snafus in the 22 budget, and boy, like I indicated, it was a learning experience for me in the last 2 years as a chairman of the finance committee, and I certainly want to take that forward. And there's some things I would like to continue on the docket here to bring our department heads to us and show us what you got, show us what you need. And more information is better than less. Making decisions with incomplete information is not good. And with that, I'll throw it over here to Blake. You got anything to add to that? But then again, like Laura just indicated, a couple here, a couple of there. We don't want a whole room full of department heads. So you just small bites. Blake?
I'm just gonna say, you hit it on the head. Transparency is key. Laura, I appreciate your, your comments around, if you're gonna say something, you gotta show up. And so that's gonna be my goal here in the near term. My priorities are gonna be to looking at these individuals to see where this is all coming. And I appreciate everyone today. This has been a great learning experience.
The only other thing I can throw out there, just a mic again, that Laura and I will be doing this myself, and I'm recommending that the finance committee take a little initiative and attend some of these, whether it be online or in person, with these other subcommittees. I will be doing that for sure. I may not be doing all of them, but I'm going to make an attempt, time permitting. And of course, we're not really going to dive into this until June, July anyway, so we have some time. Thank you.
A couple things to that, Mr. Chairman, to your last comment. That's the reason why we have the highway agenda, the highway item on the agenda. They want to spend money, as you're a member of the committee, committing 2023 money now. So that's here for the finance committee to consider that, on having to understand that it's going to be next year's budget money. And as we do the process, we have to take that in consideration. Also, to Laura's point, Mike and Steve, can you re-explain the capital improvements program?
Okay, I believe that, and some of you probably weren't here on the committee, but at the last meeting, we talked about the capital improvement plan, and we handed out the kind of the narrative of the policy, and we had changed it a little bit after that. And what many governments have been doing is a 5-year capital plan by department, projecting out their potential needs or over the next 5 years. And Dan has sent out, I know, information to departments to start to accumulate that. And then that's information that you want to have prior normally to your operating budget. And you have it, what's going to be spent in 23, 24, 25, 26, not what's going to be spent. It's like a projection. And those, as you go further out, obviously, those years aren't as certain. Things can be changed, taken off, new things added as things happen. But it's a plan, you know, it's a plan and that you guys need, really, we think you need to work with to plan your long-term debt. It's also it has the item or the project, but it also has how are you going to pay for it? You know, does it come through your normal tax levy? Does it come through your operating revenues? Or is it going to require long-term debt, long-term borrowing? You know, those are, or is it paid for by a grant? That's obviously the best way, but it doesn't always happen. So anyway, that's a little bit about that.
So, Laura, I hope that addresses your concern about the debt issue, that we'd be planning this out years.
I know they have that plan.
Yeah, I just
Now, but there's also the piece that we have to remind all of our committees that as they go through and approve different expenses and increases inside the committees, that it also changes things for finance. So if everybody in every committee can be very cognizant that if we lay down a plan as a board, that we stick to it, because we keep cutting off ourselves at our own knees by throwing in, here's another one, here's something else, here's another 10 grand, here's another this. Let's make a plan, let's follow the plan, and unless it's more of a crisis kind of thing, let's stick to the plan. Everything else can be fixed unless it's just something that's totally unavoidable.
Well, we have some good discussion here today. I don't believe we have, I'm not sure what we're looking for in action here, but we're looking at.
Action is necessary. It's a
Right.
discussion item.
I already put a line through that action part. But yeah, realistically, we need to, much like Laura and Pat had indicated, you know, we should be looking at a 6.2, maybe as high as an 8.6 cost of living inflation rate. But you know, that's down the road yet. We've got time to get there. But you know, there's work ahead of us for sure, for sure.
Yeah, and I was looking for a number or an estimate for, and that 6.2 to 8.6 is good. Where department heads, as they're forming their budget, they can stick those numbers in and see how it affects their budget. And
So it plays out, right?
Right now, whether they're going to end up with that, no, we don't know. We won't know until October, really, what the final number is going to be. But at least this way, they have a way to plan.
Well, that's why we just indicated that, is that all importance that we get these folks in front of us to where we can gather the information. You know, I don't want to recycle if more information is better. You know, transparency, as Blake had indicated, you know, we're all in this game together. Let's do the best job we can. Right, thank you. With that, let's move on to our highway. Yeah, excuse me. Do we have anything else to say on the budget? Pat?
Well, I guess we're doing a wage study too. And sooner than later, I'd like to see how the wage study, what those recommendations, how they're going to dovetail into, you know, what increase we're looking at. So in my mind, I'm thinking more of a pool of money for employees on the one hand, and there should be an increase. It seems reasonable to keep up with inflation. So if we targeted keeping up with inflation in that pool of money, then the wage study would give guidance in terms of how we then divvy up that pool of money based on recommendations from that. And then from an employee standpoint, you know, these capital improvement plans, lots of things get added to the list. I think it would be really good to impress on the employees that as they put those together, that there's only so much money. And if the board is going to consider giving a raise that keeps up with inflation or something close to it, that capital improvement list has to be modest enough so there's money available to put into that pool for wages. In other words, you know, they really need to keep that list of capital improvements to what's really needed. Otherwise, my concern is we get as a board too late in the game here, and you know, it's hard to cut things from a capital improvement list with, you know, and for us to know really where we should trim that if we need to late in the game. Or if they decide to put more money into compensation than we were prepared for, you know, how do we do that? So, you know, I think you've got to have guidance, you know, through the summer so that we're honing in on where we're going, because this could be a year where, you know, we don't want to late in the game be making decisions that we don't have time to think through or get driven by, you know, say the executive committee that hasn't sat through as, you know, these meetings, or maybe the board as a whole at the end, that we're not anticipating. And I'm thinking of the healthcare thing last year too, is one of those things that happened that, you know, we didn't anticipate. So.
Well, the one thing I have told all department heads is that just because something's on the capital improvements list doesn't mean it's going to get funded. Just because you have it funded next year, well, you may not get the grant, or the county's priorities may change, or the money may not be available, or, you know, we'll all of a sudden get a federal grant. You know, you want to do one highway, and then all of a sudden you get a federal grant that covers 80% of a different road. Well, you know, you're going to end up funding the one that you get, doing the one you get funding for. So I've been stressing that just because it's on the list does not mean it's going to get funded, or now or ever. I mean, it's priorities change, and each year will be dictated by each different year. But the point of the list is to enable us to plan.
Let me ask this question, Dan, all important. Is this wage study going to be completed for the 23 budget,
We should get it back around September.
September?
So we will
So-
get it before October, before the budget really heats up in October.
All right, well, I was hoping we can get it back before that, but thank you for bringing that up. I completely out of my thought at this point in time, but yeah, so it's September. So that means we'll probably get it by October or November. That it's not going to be in the
Well,
budget.
I understand that. And that's one of the reasons for getting the wage increase number. And, you know, these higher numbers actually help with that budgeting. If the wage study said, if this committee and the county board decide to do something with the wage study, you know, budgeting at these higher numbers is going to give us the ability to do that. So,
So the executive committee is also involved with this as well.
I'm sorry.
The executive committee.
Yeah.
With this wage study.
Yeah, they will be. Yeah.
We're two big players in accomplishing this for this 22.
Right.
But the thing is, if we can't bring it into 23, we're still going to be dragging tail, so to speak. I don't know if there's any way that we can expedite,
We can talk to-
accelerate.
We can talk to them about it.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? No, budget 23? Blake's blacked off, okay. Ron, good? All right, let's move on to highway.
Amber, would you like to present it?
Come up to the, any place.
Basically, Matt wants to purchase the chassis, place the order now. A chassis for a new dump truck. Of course, there would be additional costs later. And was it a front end loader?
Yeah, a loader and then the plow truck. We order a plow truck every year, but with the delays right now and how long it's taking, they're 12 to 18 months out right now, right? So if we order now, we'd be lucky to get it for the 2023 season. So we're looking for permission to start that bid process and get that order in for both the loader and the plow truck. The accessories we'll still do like we normally do, which we send those out once the budget is approved in November for the plow truck. So just the chassis at this time.
This is going to be paid for through the highway department's equipment fund. That's money generated from when they plow state highways and for towns and do state work. That there's a formula the state has. It says X number of hours they pay you for, and that money is then turn around and use to purchase new trucks. So this is from self-generating revenue. And he's looking at about $300,000. He says 280, but I'm gonna be honest, it'll be 300 at least before we even get a good quote in.
Well, as a member of the highway committee, we had a meeting here 3 weeks ago, and I was wondering if this is going to come to the board only because of the lag time for this equipment and being out there. And personally, myself, I have no problem approving this. But now that we're here, it's front and center to the budget committee. And I don't know, do we have to take this to the county board as well?
No,
approval?
we don't have to take it to county board as well, but you will be committing roughly $300,000 of his equipment budget in next year's budget. So that's why it came to finance. And as a motion, I would request that you allow the highway committee to approve the purchase when he gets the final quote within those parameters. So,
Any questions of the board?
like I said, this is self-generating revenue, so
Blake?
it's not extra revenue coming from the county.
You know, again, I think I'm very okay with this. I didn't see this in the packet. I saw it on the agenda, but I don't have any information around, you know, the highway budget, which again, I don't need to see today, but I approve this, but I just think that transparency here into seeing like, okay, how much money's in that fund, how much you going out, that's just part of, you know, helping me make this decision. But today, because I know we need this stuff, it's important, the money's already there, I approve it.
So the chair, you're on the highway committee. Would you make the motion to make sure we get the language correct, please?
I would make that motion, yes. That, go ahead, make my motion.
Sure. You approve spending $300,000 from the equipment budget, the highway department's equipment budget for the 2023 spent for 2023, and that the highway committee can make the final approval of the purchase when quotes are received, final quotes are received. Does that make sense?
So that we don't know the exact amount, 300,000.
It's the number's gonna fluctuate.
So
Because we don't know, he got a quote, but until we place the order, the price can change.
Is 300,000 sufficient? Are we comfortable with that?
For both pieces of equipment, yeah, he was comfortable with that.
Okay.
So-
280, we're putting a 20,000 buffer in there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I said 300. There'll still be a $20,000 buffer.
So Chair, you're making that motion?
Yes, I will. I make that motion, Chairman.
And this is Pat, I'll second then. And then as a comment, with inflation like it is, and our investments don't earn very much, it may be worth looking at other capital purchases sooner than later if we know we're going to make those purchases anyway. You know, consider, starting that process sooner than later. We may financially be in a better spot. So I think that's among the long wait that you have. I think from a budget perspective, I think we're going to be further ahead by doing this sooner than later.
Well, highway committee, Amber, can you have Matt bring his other purchases to highway next meeting? And have the written detail in the packet so we can transfer it to the finance committee packet. All right, thank you.
With that being said, we have a motion on the floor, seconded by Pat. Any further questions, Laura?
I just want to echo what Blake said. If we're having stuff on the agenda, it's nice to have that stuff in the packet so we're all aware. Numbers, solid numbers. If we're going to start doing this with the capital purchasing, maybe we need to build a process in instead of, it just feels like we just talked about this and we're jumping the shark again. So, but I get it. I mean, I totally get it. But I think we just need to start having that in the plan to look at these things ahead of time. Because these shortages and this kind of stuff isn't going to go away. It's just going to be a new kind of normal.
Okay, thank you, Laura. With that, I'll call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Any abstentions? Motion carried. Thank you. Item next is the update on the opioid settlement.
Yeah, so as everybody knows, the county, well, all 71 counties in the state that participated in the opiate lawsuit settled, and the state of Wisconsin settled. The settlement has reached enough critical mass around the country where it's going to go forward now. The amount of money we're going to receive is still a little fuzzy. The court hasn't approved the final legal expenses yet. So that will obviously affect our payout. Anticipated first payment is somewhere in the fall. Again, that's up to the administrator, the trust administrator of the settlement. Now, next week on May 31st, the Counties Association set up a Zoom meeting that I'll send anybody in this room who's like a link for securitization of the settlement. So that would give, the county would have two opportunities. We could take the yearly payments, which one case is 7 years, the other case is 19 years. And we could sell that settlement, basically. The benefit is you take away all the risk. You make sure that because any of the defendants could go bankrupt at any point. We've seen that with Purdue Pharmaceuticals. They went through bankruptcy proceeding, and Purdue's the biggest producer of OxyContin in the country, well, the only producer. So there is a possibility down the road that some of these defendants may go into bankruptcy and not be able to fulfill their payments for the settlement. So they are going to offer information about securitization that will come back to this committee for discussion. I don't know whether any of you want to take part in it or not, and I need to know more about it. But I will send the committee members a link to the Counties Association meeting. And if you want to join in, you can listen. Otherwise, I'm sure they'll be sending us a PowerPoint or something and more information, written information that we'll put in the next packet. So just wanted to give you that update. And there is still ongoing lawsuits against places like CVS and Walgreens. This was just the distributors settlement. There's also the pharmaceutical company lawsuit still occurring. So there could be potentially 2 more payouts. And we'd have the option of securitization with each separate payout. So we could choose one and not the other. Just like with this next one, we could choose to securitize the 19-year payout, but not the 7-year payout. So I'll have more information for you on that later, and I will send you all the links. So.
Since we're not really in this yet, I would suggest we make some kind of regional task force on how to use this best to help our people in the community that have been affected by opioids. I mean, I know we could probably suck, $632,300 or $683 is what's listed underneath us on this sheet. And I'm sure we could suck that right into human services to reimburse ourselves for some of those costs, which, okay, some of that, yes. But if we don't actually take this money after all the deaths in our community, all the stress, and just the pain in the families that have had these things go on, it's just a travesty. So I would rather see us start a cooperators meeting of some sort on this regionally. We know we need treatment. We know we need resources. Figure out if we can pull some of this as it's coming through and do the best for our area, because we know we're out in no man's land when it comes to these issues. And we're gonna have to cooperate and figure out a way of helping ourselves. And this is a piece to help.
That's it for now.
We're good for this?
We'll have an update after the securitization meeting and information's presented. So that'd probably be the next meeting.
Yes,
On that issue of securitization, I'm curious, so there's a stream of payments and you'd find the present value of that. And now after your comments about, so-and-so may go bankrupt, I'm curious, what rate they would be using to know if it's something reasonable in, just if it were a secure investment, something we're confident we could get the stream of payments, or if there's fear being used to try to get people to sign on to the securitization. And so whoever's presenting this, in that meeting, I hope you get some sense of what the risks are of someone, company going bankrupt, so that we're not, pressured or encouraged to buy into a securitization that's, unreasonably unfair to us.
Well, and, for this first settlement, everybody's going to have to use their own judgment and decide how much risk they're willing to take. But I don't think there's much chance of Johnson & Johnson going bankrupt or McKesson going bankrupt. This lawsuit was the biggest challenge to their existence, and they settled that. So now if, for down the road, we settle with manufacturers, I think there are some drug manufacturers that will use bankruptcy as a shield to get out of this. Now, if they're willing to sell product, not only push products to kill people, then why wouldn't they go to bankruptcy to protect that interest? So, I guess my point of view is we listen to what they have to say and then make a decision after that. So hopefully next meeting, there'll be more information. And I'm sorry, Blake, I've been keeping you waiting.
Oh, no, I was just going to second, Laura brought up something is we're talking about this money incoming, but the needs based on Liz Zott coming in and talking about young people dying, me seeing it in newspapers and obituaries of younger and younger people dying from opioids. There's a massive need here. We need to be thinking about where this money is going to most impact for those people. And I would definitely be interested in hearing, are we thinking about where this money goes right now? So when it comes, we can really, hit the ground running. Is it going to be through the county? Is it regional? I think that's where we need to start. Obviously, that's not the finance committee. We're worrying about the coming monies, but the need here is strong. And I think that's what we should be talking about as well.
Well, I would like to point out that as part of the settlement, there's very specific areas where you can spend the money. That's Schedule E, or I think it is, that was handed out before the vote of the settlement. To save everybody's time, I will email you Schedule E again. So everybody can see what the approved uses are of the settlement. It should be on the county website somewhere too, but I'll just email it to everyone so you have it for sure.
And I did see that, but I was just curious how we're thinking about it as our county when that money.
item next is investment, changing gears.
Okay, yeah. Well, the investments is just a report. So it speaks for itself. So Blake, the investment report is something we just stick in the packet. So the finance committee knows where the accounts are. So it's informational only.
Yeah, I think the only question I had on that was that our CD rates are really low based on current rates. There's some 2% out there that on $1 million, that's a significant amount of basis points that we're leaving on the table. So I just didn't know the timing of them and when they reinvest, but we can take that offline, as more transparency comes.
Okay.
Sales tax.
Sales tax is looking good. It's up from last year. Perversely, the inflation rate is helping our sales tax increase. The price of a hotel a meal goes up from $15 to $20, we benefit, and so far we haven't seen any drop in demand in the area, so that's good. I expect the hotels to be charging a lot more money this summer And corresponding to sales tax will be a lot more too.
Your verbal report.
Okay, there's just a couple things I had. One, Mr. Chairman had asked me about this a while ago. Believe it's in the packet. The Chamber of Commerce is sponsoring buses from Bayfield on the days the cruise ship arrives. So they're advertising walking the mural walk and then a nature walk with going to the Great Lakes Visitor Center, Prentice Park, the Maslowski Beach. So they are trying to bring some of the boat traffic down to Ashland and to spend their money here. So hopefully we get a bunch of people to come down this summer. Two, and this is just, a consensus, yes or no, should I begin conversations? Bayfield County called me about combining our dispatching units. So dispatchers would be all in one county and serve both counties, and the other county would just make a payment to the county. In this case, dispatching would be held, would take place in Washburn at their unit, and we make them an annual payment. I did talk to the sheriff about this, and he said if you can make it work and save money, he doesn't have a problem with it. I do believe that the issue came up because we have two new sheriffs. Bayfield's sheriff is retiring and our sheriff is retiring. So is it worth discussions to see if it will even work? Is my question. Okay.
This is Pat. Roughly 20 years ago, the county and the city of Ashland entered into an agreement regarding dispatch, and that agreement wasn't written clearly with legally enforceable language to require the city to make a reasonable contribution after it was initially drawn up. That's why the city says, nope, you can't make it. So I would, as part of this research, want to know if the county chose to join with Ashland and Bayfield County. And that is something I've heard about for decades, I think, in terms of cost savings. So I think it should be thoroughly researched from a cost saving perspective, but also to make sure we can provide the service that we should. And then the question from a legal standpoint, could the city of Ashland then be required to make a contribution? And I know for those of us that live in the city, it's a shift from one part of our tax bill to the other, and the net, probably won't be any different. But being familiar with the city of Ashland budget and the county budget, I think I can say with confidence that what the county does as an arm of the state, we're providing services that are required. Everything is pretty much essential one way or the other, whereas the city budget has more discretionary money for some of the things they do. And on the one hand, that's fine. So, my preference is if we could make this shift and get the city to make a contribution, I think overall as a taxpayer, my dollars would be used more judiciously. And I'd appreciate the research on this.
Well, I did speak to the mayor briefly about this yesterday. Very briefly, I might add. And I was going to talk to Mr. Pufall about this too. And I did briefly talk to Mr. Ortman also. So I believe that, maybe we can persuade the city to voluntarily do it. I'm not hopeful, but worth a try, Otherwise, I've been hesitant to go out to council to find out whether we can force them, just because I'm not sure it's worth spending the money on it, but. So.
It would actually be nice to see the stats on where the calls are and who's dispatched. I know we cover for each other when it comes to the city police and the sheriff's department, but it would be nice to pull those numbers and see what percentage of calls are sheriff's department's calls and which ones are city police calls.
I think that is something we can bring to the next PPLE meeting.
I do have a question. We kind of glossed over the M3. There's a Cobra compliance packet in there and such. Is that in order to make sure that we have this in place to do our wellness plan?
It's to we have to have it in place to comply with federal law.
Yeah. So we did not have this in place before, so this is like an HR function that was pulled from them?
I believe it's something you have to do every year.
Okay, I'm just saying, is this in addition to our contract? Because our contract was,
This
The
is part of
health-
our contract.
okay,
Yeah. Yeah, as part of our contract, they do compile all the compliance stuff for us
okay.
and put it in a nice, easy to use format. So,
I know I read through it. Is there some things you wanted to highlight from there? Because it seems like there was things that we weren't doing that we should have been.
there were some postings that were not being done properly. Those are being done now. Most of that stuff's available on the state, from the state on their websites. Information sent out was not being done when it was supposed to be done. Like I said, everything's in compliance now, and it will be in compliance going forward.
One other question I had was, did we have the treasurer's office go and look for any other wonderful pots of money that we have at some end of a rainbow?
We did, and we did not find any wonderful pots of money.
Oh,
We do have one pot of money, which I have not broached with the department head yet. But there's about $90,000 sitting out there that can be transferred to the general fund.
that seems wonderful and pot of goldie.
Yeah, yes, and I have not broached this with the department head yet, and I anticipate lots of pushback, to be honest. Yes, because they've historically thought it was their little slush fund. But state statutes say otherwise. So I will, if anybody wants to know, come ask me personally. I don't want to publicly say anything until at least the department head knows.
I was gonna say on the Cobra, when I left my employer, my wife and I, used that, and what's in that packet with the letters written there and the information is very clear. That made it very easy for us to understand, the law and the process, and that way you get good, clear information in a process, and HR tends to be, in many places, a place where people come and go, and so you've got that consistency and good information, and we know insurance isn't cheap these days, so it's a really important piece when people leave their employer to have that there. I think that's one of the benefits that we're seeing of, making the changes that we are having here. So.
Thank you. So do we have a, changing gears again, scheduled date for an executive meeting?
Executive, I believe, is June 14th. Lori, oh, you know what? I can do it this way.
I'm looking, Dan.
I'm just looking on the website here. I can find it. Okay, so executive is June 14th and county board is June 21st. And let's see, HHS is on the 15th. And zoning is on the 7th. And all these dates are listed on the county website on the homepage.
So with that, we do not have a meeting scheduled for the finance committee in June?
Not yet. So do you want to do it before or after executive?
I don't have a preference myself. I don't, what about the board members? Do we want to do this after the executive meeting?
I think after, if the administrator wants to have some discussion related to the big picture of the budget, that would be helpful.
Okay, so why don't we, Lori, is June 28th taken?
No, it is not.
Okay, can you please reserve the county boardroom for June 28th?
Yep.
And then just so everybody knows, July 6th to the 13th, I'll be out of town.
Well, we're gonna have a party then.
It's okay, I'll be scuba diving.
If we're gonna continue to have 9 o'clock in the morning secret meetings, Because I have like this day gig that I do now,
Mhm.
if we could just pick a day and kind of have these meetings consistently and scheduled in for a
Yeah.
while, I mean, that would be cool. I can make a plan then.
Cool. Well, why don't we at the next meeting then on June 28th, everybody come up with think about, do you want to just say it's always the third Tuesday of the month? Or do you want, whatever?
I think we did decide that about a year ago. We just haven't been following it.
Okay. Okay. Well, why don't we put it up as an agenda item on the next agenda? So it's official and you can set a date.
We'll keep the third week.
So we would. Yeah, but why don't we put it on as an agenda item? And that way we can always, you can actually vote on it and make it official and all that stuff. And then knowing that in September and October, there's going to have to be more frequent meetings. Just so everybody.
We have one last item.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
This is Pat, I'll second.
We have a motion by Ron, second by Pat to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.